Hi, welcome to today's webinar called Deploy Your Static WordPress Site Automagically. Today we will talk a bit about WordPress, static sites, and of course magic. Together with me, there is Nate Finch, who is Strattic's senior wizard, WordPress wizard, of course, and he will show us how with a simple spell convert a normal WordPress site to a very fast and secure static website. Later, me as a humble alchemist at Buddy, I will show how to build some quite easy pipelines that will make deploying files easier and simpler and without the use of FileZilla, because no one wants to use FileZilla today anymore. So yes. Before we start with all this magic, Nate, tell us one thing, because every time we are thinking about static websites, I think about the 90s and the notepad and building the HTML files all by hand. Does this change, or are we still going to do it the same way?
Yeah, it's funny because that's how we all learned, right? We all learned on Notepad++ or TextMate or something like that. And yeah, it just feels like we're going back to the retro or the vintage static site. But this is different because what we're doing at Strattic is we're taking your WordPress site and making it a static site. There's been a lot of talk about like headless stuff, and we can talk about that later. But basically what we're doing is creating your site as a static site and serving it up from a global network, right? So all of our stuff gets served up through AWS. Your site gets statified, and then we serve it up on CloudFront CDN, and that just makes your site super fast, scalable, very secure. Because another thing that we do is take, obviously your database is removed from the static site. There's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so what we do after you're done with editing your site or you're done with publishing your site is we just spin your WordPress site down so that it's turned off and it's not accessible to the outside world. We have several other security features too while your WordPress site is up, like HTTP auth access and a few different things going on too, obviously to make your site as secure as possible. But basically, if you're not editing your site and you don't need it to be up, we just turn it off. And that way it's just not available to be hacked.
Okay, I get it. But on the other hand, everyone now is talking mostly about either Gatsby or Next.js or the whole headless approach. And how does Strattic differs from this?
Yeah, so I love building on things like Gatsby and stuff like that too. It's so fun to use all the new cool tools and everything like that. But in the end, a lot of times your end user, the person who's editing content for your site, is not a developer. A lot of times they're a marketer or a content editor or something like that. They're just trying to write their stuff out, put some images in there, a sign up form or a call to action or whatnot, hit publish and let it do its thing, So while Gatsby or Next or Nuxt or AngularJS or Backbone for all the old folks out there in the back, I see you. The main thing that what we do on Strattic is that we just allow you to bring your WordPress site as it is. So you get all the benefits of like a headless implementation, a decoupled implementation, where you're using just basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in any front-end framework that you're going to use. We give you that benefit by making your WordPress site static, and you don't have to hire a team of developers to rebuild your site. And then your content management team or your marketing team can go in, as they always have, and they typically like using WordPress, and they can go in, make their edits just how they always have done, add new content, hit publish, and then I'll show you all in a second here, hit publish again, and then your site's statified, it's live, it's all good, it's fast, it's secure, and everybody's ready to read it.
I really love the word statified. I think we really should use it more often. But one more thing, you mentioned before, there is no database. So how will the plugins work? And from what I know, there is no PHP, so it's even getting harder and harder.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's usually an issue that comes up with moving your site to like a decoupled and headless implementation or a static site, right? How am I going to have people submit forms to me, basically contact form, or how are comments going to work, or how can they do a live search on our site. And there's been a lot of tools coming up in the last 5 years or more that have sought to address those issues, like Algolia for search, and a bunch of different, like, whether you're using like HubSpot or some other kind of marketing CRM, they give you forms that you can embed that are all front ends, right? Even Stripe, like, you can just check out on the front end with Stripe now for e-commerce and stuff. And there's things like Equid for e-commerce and other tools that are always coming up. So just because you don't have access to a database doesn't mean you can't do databasey kind of things. One of the things that we try to do, though, at Strattic is to make sure that you have all those tools already in place, and we want those to work as they are. So we have integrations for like native WordPress search. We have integrations for Contact Form 7, which I'll show you here in a second, for Gravity Forms, for a lot of different forms, Yoast SEO, Rank Math, like all of your kind of major plugins that are being used. We want those to work out of the box so that when you move your site over to Strattic, that you can just publish it and not have to worry about it. There might still be some custom things that need to happen for sure, and our team helps out with that. But moving forward, we really want to be able to just have people move their site on. Like, we don't offer WooCommerce support yet because that's a pretty big beast, but maybe in the future that'll be something coming down the road. So yeah, just because you don't have a database doesn't mean you can't do those kind of databasey kind of things. So
yeah, I really can't wait for this WooCommerce integration. It will be like something really incredible.
Yeah, don't anybody hold your breath for that, for sure.
Okay, so I think now I will let you show off your magical tricks.
All right. So yeah, basically this is the Strattic publishing area. So what we do when you move your site over to Strattic, we just basically have a plugin that we run on the site, and it does all of our cool magic stuff. So what we do is we allow you to publish to a live environment as well as a preview environment. And a lot of folks, come over from hosts maybe that have like a staging environment and a one-click to deploy to live and things like that. But what we have is basically your WordPress site as it is, as a WordPress site traditionally is. And then we have publishing to static. So you can publish to a preview environment, or you can publish to a live environment. There's a couple of different kinds of publishes as well. We have a full publish that just takes everything on your site. And if your site's really big and massive and you're running, multiple languages, stuff like that, with like WPML or something, then this will take a little bit to publish. But if you have a smaller site, kind of a traditional blog type site, or a company, what we would call those, like a brochure site, this will go a lot faster. So depending on how much content and resources that you have, a live publish could take a little longer, but basically it just takes everything and it publishes that. Quick publish, what we do is kind of track like the changes that have happened on your site. So if you've created a new blog post or a new page or added a new image, made some edits to another page, all those things will be tracked. And then you can do a quick publish, which will happen a lot faster and allow you to get your site published to live or to preview a lot faster as well. The last thing we just implemented was selected publish. So let's say you've made some changes to your about page, your home page, and your contact page, but you only want the changes from your contact page to go up. You can just come in here and put in /contact and whatever, and then you can just click selected publish to live. And what that does is it starts the publishing process for that page, and pretty soon it will be live. We have this handy dandy indicator up there, and once it's done kind of scraping everything down, it'll just give you the input that your site is completed. So, and then you can go view the site. So that's really cool, but why would you move over and do this? Why would you kind of go through the whole rigmarole of a static site, right? What we kind of did here was just before the call or before this webinar started, we just ran some speed tests or lighthouse tests on this. So this is our Buddy demo where we're running the Go theme from GoDaddy because it's pretty clean and everything. And we've got the typical theme unit test data on here. So there's a bunch of words and images and stuff like that. And we ran it, and I had already installed the Yoast SEO plugin. So just by installing some of these things, right, you can raise your SEO score up. or the site will use best practices and stuff like that. This Go theme is pretty accessible as well. But you can see just out of the box, even on this text page, the performance is not great. So you can see the admin bar up here. This is the traditional WordPress site. So it's not like the static site or the preview site. But once we published to live and ran the same test, you can see that the URL here is the .live. So we have a Buddy demo .live. That the Lighthouse scores are a lot better, right? And so you have a 63 here, and this is, like I said, just a page with a lot of text on it and some images, right? So it's getting a 63 performance here. But just by moving to Strattic and publishing your site on Static, then you get this massive performance boost, and you can see all the images are there and everything like that. So that's basically what our workflow looks like when you're publishing on Strattic. And these are just the gains that you can get already just being on Strattic. So a couple of things too, like this is the live site here. So if I'm searching, and since this is the theme unit thing, I'm just gonna search template. But what we do is we try to interact with the native WordPress search so that you're able to get instant results from Algolia. We integrate with Algolia on our platform. So you're able to very quickly index your site with Algolia, and also once the site is published, you're able to have that native WordPress search. So anytime on a theme that you see these, search buttons and stuff like that, that should work out of the box as well. And that's typically not something that will work out of the box on any kind of static site or like a headless implementation. You have to build that out yourself. With Strattic, that comes included. The other thing that I forgot right before, 5 minutes before the webinar started, was to actually add a contact form to this site. So I just quickly installed Contact Form 7. We're all very familiar with that, right? It's a free, pretty good form plugin, and with just some simple fields here, and published it really quick. And so we've got that here on the live site. And if I just like filled out, test and hey there, folks, and then submit it. Thank you for submitting your message and stuff like that. And if I come over to my Strattic email, you can see that this was just sent a minute ago here, and we got our message. So a lot of things that would typically not work out of the box on like a typical, static implementation or anything like that, they work on Strattic because we've built all of those integrations and implementations. So it's one less thing that you have to worry about. So yeah, I guess too, one of the things that I would want to say as we're moving into this webinar, the webinar is about a workflow, right? We get a lot of questions from a lot of our customers about how can we deploy to Strattic with a Git workflow, right? So we've gone through the process of starting to build out what that looks like. And we've written up some documentation, and we have written up like a nice handy ebook for you, and we'll be releasing a blog post soon on all this stuff. But basically what we have here, and I'll just show this to you really quick, is this nice ebook here. So it's an ideal WordPress development and deployment workflow with W2 Migrate DB Pro and Deploy HQ and Buddy. So we're only going to talk about the Buddy part of this on this webinar, but if you're interested in like kind of the end-to-end solution of what this workflow looks like, and you want to grab this ebook, if you just come to strattic.com and go to /buddy, man, if I can type and talk at the same time, it'll redirect you to this page, and you just put in your information here, and you can grab that ebook. And like I said, it'll be available online a little bit later. But yeah, it's basically going to give you all the steps for this, right? So before we typically talk about that, we usually talk about like why you would use like a workflow. I can't see anybody's hands or anything, but if you've ever used SFTP, or if you've logged into your host cPanel and used File Manager and stuff like that, where you're just basically uploading a file one by one, you know that that can be really tedious and it can take a lot of time. And if you've edited 10 files that need to be updated, did you write all those down and stuff? I know I never did. So that's how I started getting into things like Git and the Git workflow and deployments and stuff like that. So, we talk about just making our workflow efficient and effective and stuff like that. And one of the things that has been really helpful to me on hosts that don't allow you to connect via SSH and install Git and all that kind of stuff, which Strattic is one of those hosts, is to use a third-party service like Buddy to automate those workflows and to build out your site and deploy your site through basically a Git workflow. So you can have your Git repository, and you can have something like Buddy manage those deployments for you. And what that does is it totally offloads that cognitive load of which files did I edit, what was I doing before, all that kind of stuff, and it just makes deployments of sites so much faster and easier. So one of the things that you do for that is Git version control, and that's basically installing Git on your local computer and running that code through version control and setting up a repository. We probably won't be talking about that part here. This webinar kind of assumes that you know that kind of stuff, but all of that information is available in that ebook that I was just showing you for download. The other thing that this does is, what it does is it keeps the files tracked that you want to track. So if you have an entire WordPress install, right? You got your WordPress core files, you got your plugin files, you got your must-use plugin files, you got your theme files, you've got your upload files, you have maybe some upgrade files that haven't been, taken off of your server. You've got some other files that plugins have created to cache or to, store backups. You have all of this stuff, right? And one of the things that I try to do is to make sure that you're ignoring files that you don't need to track. So in that ebook, you will also see a link to two examples for Git ignore files. And one is a little bit more generous, but it still ignores WordPress core unless you want to track that. And another file, or another Git ignore file in there, is one that I would say is a lot more shrewd or exclusive, right? So ignore everything but your themes directory if you're just developing a theme that you want to deploy, or ignore everything but your theme and your plugins directory. So typically in a Git repository, you don't want to have your WordPress uploads in there, right? That's just a massive amount of stuff, right? Especially when you have folks going in there and uploading 10 gigabyte images and stuff like that to your WordPress site. So we are really talking about tracking code on this webinar, but there are a lot of different methods, and your team should kind of have that discussion and try to figure out and know what's best there. So without further ado, then I want to pass this back over to Maciej so that he can show us the magic that is Buddy.
I would say it's just a bit of alchemy. The magic was your part, but yes, there's the part about storing things in Git is really important. In our example, we will just store our theme inside. So this is the Git repository with all the files, and what we're gonna do is we will build pipelines. Pipelines are just a set of actions. And the first pipeline will deploy all our files. So let's create a new one. We will call it, you guessed it, deploy. And every time we will push something to our repository into the master branch, this pipeline will run. So we created a pipeline, and now we have to add some actions. So let's start with the deploying of the files itself. So we will use SFTP, and so first of all, we have to choose. We'll be using the GitHub repository files. So in that case, we would only upload the files that are in the repository, or we can use the pipeline file system. This is a really great thing about Buddy, because we will not only have access to the files in the repository, but also to the files that will be created in a process by some other actions. So this is something we will use, because we will use some NPM commands that will convert our SCSS files into CSS, and so on and so on. The Go theme has a few tasks that will not only build our CSS, but they will also clean it up and so on. The next thing is we have to, of course, put our connection data. So I will do it right now. I have it noted on my second screen, so no one see it because Okay, so we have everything. Now let's select the remote path where we want to upload it, because as you remember, in the Git repository we have also the Go folder. So we just have to put it into wp contents/themes, and then the folder will be created. Okay, but that's not all. We will also have to ignore some paths because we don't want to upload everything. So let's first take a quick look at our repository. There is a folder called .dev. We really won't need it because this is the place when all the SCSS files and all other assets that are where the final version is built from. So we don't need this folder on the production version. So let's start with removing it, like this. And also, because we will run at some point npm install, we really won't need this folder because it's really heavy and we don't want to upload it every time during during our uploads. So let's add this action. Okay, so let's dismiss this for. So we already have the upload files to SFTP. The next step will be running some npm commands. So let's add a new action called Node.js. With this, as you can see, the Node in the version 12 is installed in the background. It's running on Docker, so we don't have to worry about it. And we have to do a few things. First of all, we have to go into the Go folder. Then we have to run npm install because thanks to this, we will install all the dependency we will need. Then we have to run npm run build because this is the command name. And we are almost finished, but there is one more thing. This is a bit tricky for this theme because in the dev folder there are some deploy shell scripts, and those scripts will need a small change. So we will have to run the local shell, and I will just insert. So we will go into the Go folder again, and we will add the possibility to executable for all the scripts in the deploy script. So while having this, we already have our pipeline. First, all the files in the deploy scripts will be executable. Then we will run npm scripts. And after this, we will upload all the scripts, all the files. And this will run every time we will do some change on our website. So let's do it. Let's go into assets, into CSS, and let's change a post title. This will be something visible. Let's make it font weight bold so it will be visible, and when we will hover on it, let's make it color red. Okay, so we have this. I'm clicking commit changes, and at this moment the deployment is already in progress, as you can see. So now we can take a look what is happening. So at this point, all the npm dependencies are getting installed. Sadly, this is the quite long part, so we will have to wait a few seconds. Yes.
What's really cool, I think, about what you just did is that, a lot of times we're working locally with, Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, whatever, some kind of IDE, and you're showing, that you can just edit your stuff in GitHub. That might not be the best like, flow for all teams and stuff, it's great for an example though. And I also love, because I've actually talked to a lot of bootcamp students that are like, they actually edit their files directly in GitHub and stuff. So this makes it accessible to so many different levels of developers as well, that you just need a Git repository. A lot of the stuff that we kind of talk about is, kind of conceptual, I guess you could say. But really all you need is just some code and a Git repository to make this stuff work. It's amazing. So
yes, as you see, all the NPM stuff just finished, and now it's listing the files that changed. So this is also important, because the first time is always the longest one. Every next time we will run some change, only the file that changed will be uploaded. The one that didn't just will be left alone. So so apart from the first upload, every next one should be much faster. And this is what Nate said about the beginning. We don't have to remember what we already uploaded and what not, because Git is doing this for us, and this is really great. We can and that's all. We uploaded it to our WordPress version. But from what I see, yes, we changed to but that's not a problem. Let's go to, if I remember, to some post. It should be enough. Let's go to the hello world. Sorry, let's go to a category, yes, because we changed it. For some reason, I don't see a change here. Oh, yes, now it is. Yes, the cache, of course. As you see, the titles are bolder and they are red on Hoover. So our change did work. The change is already there. Okay, so we have the deployment already, which is cool. We can, of course, we can add many more actions, because as you probably saw, but I will show you this again, we can add lots and lots of actions here. There are just whatever you would like. You can finish such action with, for example, sending a notification to Slack or a short message, or whatever you like. So there is a lot of other actions you can do. But the next step, we already have the deployment. So now let's do a pipeline that will do some testing for us, because we are just people. So we probably will make mistakes, and all the automation stuff is for this, that we will still make those mistakes, of course, but it will help us find those. So we're going to create now a pipeline called tests. It will run manually each time we want, because sometimes we may want to run it after we create a new post or something like this. So let's start with the thing called link validator. It does exactly what it says. So it monitors your website for 404 and 500 errors, just like this. So we will copy our website URL, and every time it will run, it will just check if there are any 404s or 500 errors on our website. This is really nice, because we sometimes change the URLs on our website and we'll just make a typo or something like this. So, and the one change we will do, it's the error handling. We won't stop the execution. We will just proceed the execution, mark action as a warning, and jump to the next action, because this action will just test our stuff. So even any change won't block any deployment or anything. Okay, the next step, because we have really few of them, it's visual tests. This is really a nice one too. This just compares screenshots. So if something changed on our website, it will give us a chance to approve or not of this change. And the next thing, and this is really now important, because remember that Google promised that the lighthouse scores and especially the core vitals will be very important for our SEO, so our position in Google search. So it's a good thing to keep our performance, accessibility, and best practices as good as possible, and it's good to make it to check it every time we change something. So for now, we will run it for that the score must be of minimum 50, and of course now our URL. And in the end, there is also one more cool action we have. I mean, we have a lot of cool actions, but I think this is a really nice one. It's SSL verify, because it sometimes happens that not in case when you are using Strattic, because Strattic is taking care of your SSL certificate, but it mostly useful for if you are having your own certificate and you have a tendency to forget about it, to prolong it. So we are just setting it, and it will check if our certificate is valid. We can also check if our certificate will be valid for the next 7 days, 40 days, or 1 month. But let's check just now. And again, don't stop the execution. Okay, so we have actions like this, and let's run this pipeline and see what will happen. And so yeah, this is another task that can get a lot of things out of our head, that we don't have to remember about those. We don't have to check them by hand. We don't have to install a special plugin for link validation, because there is one and it's ultra heavy. And it's really making our life much easier. In our case, as we see, everything is going fine. So every link was correct. Visual test, because nothing changed before we ran this test before, so it went through also okay. We can check the lighthouse score. It was 99 and and 91, so it's really okay. So yes, we don't have to worry, and the SSL was also correct. So we can build such tasks just to make sure everything on our website is working fine. And we really, this is really great, because imagine that you have not only one site, but 10 or 20, and you just run it automatically at some point and you don't think about it. And if something goes wrong, you will be notified at once. And in the end, I will create one last pipeline, because we really would always like to know that our website is alive. So we're going to build something called Uptime Robot. You probably all know this application. It just checks if your website is alive. So this time we will use the trigger mode recurrently. And every 5 minutes, it will just do some actions, or one action in our case. So we will find an action called web. And again, we just enter our URL, and that's all. So every 5 minutes, it will ping our website to check is it alive. If it's not, we can set to this is a possibility to run actions run on failure. So in our case, I am a big fan of Telegram. So every time the website will go down, I will receive a short notice on Telegram that the website is down. And when the website will get back to normal, I can also create one more action, also on Telegram. This time, I will get the information that the website is alive again. And as you see, in 3 minutes, it will run automatically. But let's not waste our time. Let's run it now. Let's run it. And yes, it's running, because Strattic is a really solid solid hosting, so it will work for the most of the time, and you won't receive any notice from this Uptime robot. But if something would happen, you will know at once something is wrong.
So you could always use the Uptime robot or the recurring message thing to also send you a reminder to stand up and drink more water and things like that too, right? Yeah. So there's a very holistic approach.
Yes, I never thought about using CI/CD for life.
For your health. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes, I think this is a great topic for a next webinar. I think we will. Yeah, we will probably have to meet and talk about this.
Absolutely.
So okay, I think we covered all the magic, all the alchemy, and let me see. Are there any questions? Yes. Are there? I don't see anything from the YouTube chat. So I think we covered everything. So let's sum it up. Why we should use static, Nate?
Yeah, the reason that you'd want to do that, and I always boil it down to as many S's as I can: speed, security, scalability, separation of concerns. If you have like this decoupled WordPress thing, so your static site is not your WordPress site, and that adds to the security. There's a lot of reasons to go static, but those are the main 4 S words that I usually throw out there and stuff like that. I'm also in the chat here, just writing this out. Just saying too, like I know this webinar is probably a lot more like for technical folks, but if you're non-technical, that's great, and I'm so glad that you're here. We also have a guide that's a static first guide to WordPress. So there are some considerations, like I was talking about before, that we've overcome as far as like contact form search and a few other things. But there are considerations that you need to make going to static, and this is another really good resource to help out with that. So if you are looking to do that, feel free to download that. You can always hit me up on Twitter. My email is nate@strattic.com. Very simple and everything. So you can always ask us questions. Our support team is always around, and yeah, would be happy to help out with that. So that's why you should do static, because Strattic does static.
I always say that the one more thing that is really great about static is the peace of mind, because it just works. It's so simple in the end that it just works. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we have some questions. Do we need to rebuild whole site when we change main menu items?
No, main menu items. Let's see here. That should be able to be taken care of on the quick publish and everything. So, yeah, I think that the main menu items, that should be able to be taken care of on a quick publish. I haven't tested that though, so I'm 90% sure.
Okay, the next one. If you have time, can you suggest the GitHub deployment flow that works for Buddy and Strattic? Oh man, it will be with our favorite word probably. It depends. It really depends, because there are so many tactics. Because for me, I'm a big fan of always using Bedrock. So using Composer to manage everything with Composer, plugins, themes, the WordPress itself, and it's really great for using Buddy. I also tried it on Strattic and it worked. It worked like charm. So
yeah, the resource guide has a whole example, actually has several examples of how you would set up your workflow. Because the other thing that you want to take into consideration is that you're not just working, well, especially if you're working in a team, right? You have, on Strattic at least, you have the main WordPress site that you're using, and then you have a live environment and a preview environment, that those are both static. But then you also may have, and we've done this for some of our more enterprise level customers, another staging site, right? That is another separate WordPress site that has its own live and preview as well. And then you've got a team of developers and stuff like that. They're all working on their personal laptops and working on different branches and stuff like that. And depending on what branching model you're using and things, it can get kind of hairy. But the main thing to remember with WordPress is to keep your kind of the whole thing of WordPress. We typically don't divide it up, but basically you have code that runs it. So that's your themes, plugins, WordPress core files, etc. Those are all like, .php, CSS, JavaScript, all those files. Then you have your kind of your file uploads or your media files and stuff. So those are going to be your pictures, your JPEGs, whatever, PNGs, PDFs as well, whatever you're kind of loading into the media library, whatever's in kind of the uploads folder. And then the third part is that you have a database, right? So that's kind of the thing, is like, how do you version control your database, right? There's been a lot of kind of trial and error on that. I can't remember the name of the company that seems like they're moving forward with it, but it's in the resource. I did the research on it, but yeah, I remember that Delicious Brains tried to put out like something called MergeBot, and it's just really hard to manage that workflow with multiple databases and tracking changes across multiple databases and things like that. So anyway, like, kind of a long story short, what I've always found really helpful is this idea of like your code, like, kind of starts on your development machine, whether that's your laptop or a server that you're kind of running a development environment on, and you push that over to your repository, and then that goes to your staging or live environment that would be like on Strattic, for example. But your code doesn't come down from there, right? Like, if you're adding a plugin, you have to add that plugin in your local repository and then push that up to your GitHub repository and stuff, and then that plugin gets deployed to the live site, for example. On the flip side of that, though, your database, so all your content, all of your image files and stuff like that, those should not be like in your version control, and those should come kind of down from the live site. Like, so the live site has the source of truth for your database, all your posts, comments, whatever, and your images and stuff like that. So this kind of code goes up to the live environment, and then like database and files kind of come down. I think if you can keep that separation generally in mind when you're designing like a development flow, that has saved my rear end so many times. And yeah, just like, if you can keep that in mind as kind of a guiding principle, then your specific team workflow can hopefully become more clear on like what you should do. So like I said, the resource has several different examples on how to manage that. But yeah, try it out and let me know what you think there, Alex.
And for one more thing for me, one of the most important things about any flow is just to keep up with it all the time, and not at some point stop using it. Because I worked at some companies when at some point we were using the flow, then we stopped and we started again, and it was just a total chaos. So
Right.
Sometimes it's really better to start simple, but use it always.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we have another question here. How long will take Strattic site build for 10,000 pages?
Yeah, I'll use Maciej's phrase, and it depends. It depends on what kind of publish you're doing. Like, if you're doing quick publish, if you're doing a full publish and stuff, it depends on the amount of resources that you have going into those pages. So if there's like media files or audio files, or if it's just very bare bones, or all the style files, it really depends. So we've seen build times on big sites at like 5 or 10 minutes, and we've seen build times that where we've come in and helped optimize things, but they can go for 30 minutes or an hour sometimes. So you do it before lunch, and then you come back. One of the nice things though about Strattic, and I try to reiterate this a lot, because it's really easy to get into the workflow of I created a blog post, it's great, it's good to go, I'm just going to publish it live. But if you never use the preview environment, you kind of get out of that habit of making sure that what you've just deployed, works well across your static site, right? And so our preview environment is the exact same deployment process as the live environment. So unlike other hosts where you might have like a, if you have like a staging site, that's a WordPress staging site, and then a live site that you deploy to, that live site might have a lot more, resources behind it, a bigger, server processor, whatever kind of thing. With us, because they're all static files, it's all the same, right? So if you can deploy it to preview and it looks good, then you can deploy it to live and it should be just fine, right? So that also adds time to the deployment. I get that and everything. But yeah, it should, that's something to kind of keep in mind. Another thing that we didn't talk about that Maciej actually asked about before this was, well, can I automate a deployment to live or preview? And we actually do have that available with our API. We don't have it for like general availability right now. Currently, it's just for enterprise customers, but we're working on, refining it and stuff like that, so that, you can imagine in the pipelines that Maciej was just showing that once you push up to, the WordPress site and everything looks good, maybe you run a regression test or something like that. Once you push that up and if everything looks good, go ahead and make a deployment to live or to preview and stuff like that. And, like I said, we'll be probably opening that up for general availability soon. So you'd be able to integrate that into your workflow and your pipelines as well. So
this is also the thing I just can't wait, because I I really love automating things, because I'm lazy. Let's be honest, I'm lazy, and that's why I really love CI/CD, because.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we are out of questions, sadly. So Nate, thank you very much. It was really a great webinar. I also learned a lot, and I hope that, I think when you will have WooCommerce on one hand and this automation of deployments on the other, we will really have to do the second webinar. It will be like black magic of Strattic or something like this. We will,
I might have a lot more gray hairs by then, depending on how long it takes.
Cap, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice big mohawk in the front there. It'll be a massive tidal wave.
Okay, yeah. So yes, that's the plan. I really just can't wait for those two features, so we can do this webinar. Really, it will be much better than this one, because you will have a mohawk and this hat, and yeah,
way entertaining.
Exactly. Okay, so thank you all. Thank you for joining us. It was really nice, and see you and have a nice day. Convert all your sites to static. It's really worth it.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Maciej.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.